Welcome to a special episode of Strange Darkness Radio. In this captivating installment, our hosts, Bobby and Carolyn, had the privilege of being guests on the fantastic Dairyland Frights Podcast, hosted by none other than the amazing John Radtke. During Bobby and Carolyn's appearance on the show, they shared the intriguing story of their journey into podcasting, exploring the roots of their passion for the mysterious and the unknown. But there's more to the tale. They also ventured into the Dairyland Frights Podcast's riveting topic, the Missouri State Penitentiary, renowned as the bloodiest 47 acres in America, as acclaimed by Time magazine. So, fasten your seatbelts and prepare for a thrilling odyssey through the macabre and the unexplained as we embark on a chilling historical expedition of the Missouri State Penitentiary. This is Strange Darkness Radio, where we unveil the secrets of a place that has witnessed more darkness than most. Stay tuned for an episode that will send shivers down your spine.
Hello, my spooky friends. This is John, your host for Dairyland Frights, the paranormal podcast that covers everything spooky, creepy, and mysterious in the Midwest. And again, I'm so blessed. I have some great guests on here, and I love it. They are from Strange Darkness, Carolyn and Bobby. Welcome.
Thank you very much, John, for having us.
Oh, again, I'm blessed to have guests on you like yourselves. I love your podcast. I've been listening to it. Bobby, you told me you had like an over 2-hour podcast on Halloween. So that was must have been interesting. So can you do me a favor? Carolyn, you want to go first? Bobby, you can go first. Doesn't really matter. Tell me a little bit about Strange Darkness Radio and what it's about.
Well, go ahead, Carolyn.
Oh, no, I was going to say I'll let Bobby do this part because this is his baby. So.
All right.
Well, basically, I had a paranormal experience at the age of 11, and it was so crazy to where, and I talk about that on the show also. That's probably the first episode, and that questioned everything going forward from that point. So I've always been, looking and trying to dive into the paranormal just to see what, that experience that I had, and, have others, had those type of same things happen to them. And so, throughout the years, I've always talked, about the paranormal activities that go on in people's homes and the experiences that people have. And so, that kind of prompted me, you know what, I need to start a podcast. And then so I went ahead and started this podcast, Strange Darkness Radio.
Nice. So I have to ask, Bobby, tell me a little bit. I know you probably have already said it to your audience, but I have a whole new audience here. Would love to hear your little paranormal experience at
Okay.
age 11.
Well, let me make this brief because it's kind of a little detailed. But
all right, let's
go ahead. Yeah. Okay,
nice
but
teaser.
Exactly. Okay, a little teaser. Well, we were at the drive-in. We came back home. I really had to go to the restroom. Didn't want to, find my way back to the car and all that jazz. So I waited, until we got home. Me and my dad came to the door of our home. We entered the home. There was a glow, a light that was coming from like the right side of the living room area. And as we entered, I tried to dart off and go to the restroom. And then as my dad, saw whatever was happening in the kitchen in the living room area, he told me to freeze, get out of the house. Somebody's in the house. And I was like, I need to go to the restroom. So so being a kid, my first thought is, because my dad was in the military, and my first thought is, I gotta go to the bathroom. So for whatever reason, I bypassed the hall bathroom to go to my parents' bathroom. I go down to the end of the hall, and as I look over to the right in my parents' bed, there is a long figure laying in the bed, and I froze. And then so as
Oh,
I look
man.
at this figure, it's like
Yeah.
it was like a movie playing. I can hear my dad calling me, but I couldn't make out what he was saying as he was running down the hall. And as he puts his hand on my shoulder to grab me, the whatever figure was laying in the bed just totally went like into the bed. It's just the blankets were still disheveled. It just slowly just like, just melted into the bed. And he's like, I told you to get out of the house, and everything. And what had happened was in the kitchen area, all the dishes were out of the cabinets, all of the food was out of the refrigerator. It was it was like somebody ransacked the house. And then as the police came, there was nobody that entered the home. They said someone must have entered the home and locked the door on the way out because there was no sign of any entries or anything. And so that was my, first paranormal experience.
Wow. That is crazy. I've heard something similar to that before where people have said they've gone into their house and like there's someone in their bedroom, like at the edge of their bed and stuff, but I've never heard anything like that. That's crazy.
Oh yeah.
Man.
And my parents had a king size bed. It was really, really huge. And you even had to have steps to get onto the bed. And so that, it was, it was crazy. It was crazy.
Wow.
But that was my first experience. That's what.
I love it. I love it. That's a good spooky one. Wow, man. I don't know. I would scream like a little girl and run. I
was shocked. I couldn't move. That whole thing when people say, you see something and then it just stops you in your tracks. And being at 11, I was like, what am I seeing? What is going on? And even the image, how it, I looked at the image to stop. It's like a feeling, you that came over me. It's just like, don't move. And
Yeah. So let me ask you this, Bobby, and then Carolyn, I'll get to you next. Was that what interested you in the paranormal, or is there another event that interested you in the paranormal for you to want to do a paranormal podcast?
No, that's what sent me down the path to ask questions about what we see and what we hear, and what we believe. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. And so that sent me down the path to ask questions. I, love it or hate it, I would be in church asking like, certain questions like, are demons real? Are, spirits real? Those questions are like, oh, you're not supposed to talk about that. And, being in the African, American community, it's like, that's just something that you really don't discuss, just sit there and catch the Holy Ghost and you're good. And that was pretty much.
Don't ask questions.
Yeah, exactly. And so no, ever since then, I've always, that's when I went to the library, started doing research on, different things in the paranormal realm and going down that rabbit hole. But yep.
Yeah. That's really interesting. One of my guests, her father was a minister. And, they just believed in everything, there's good and there's bad and there's God, Jesus. And she said she lived in a haunted house too. So there'd be all these things, they would be attacked. And then she thought they were being attacked for their Christianity or their, you know what I mean? Because they believed so much. But then after she became older, she was like, I don't know. What does this mean? Why did I have these experiences? Why, is there demons? Is there whatever? And her father, who was a minister, actually was a priest, had performed exorcisms too.
Oh, wow.
So he had seen firsthand people believe they had been possessed by a demon, Satan, whatever you want to say. So I found that really interesting. That's awesome. I love it. So Carolyn, can you top it?
I don't know. I have one good story. I've always believed in paranormal since I was like a child, and I've always been interested, but nothing really spooky or paranormal has ever happened to me until pretty recently. I had one experience.
Okay.
I don't think I can top Bobby, but
well, you never know.
Yeah, I'll try. But basically, me and an ex-boyfriend of mine, my ex, were ghost hunting in the local cemetery in my home city, Sacramento, California.
Uh-oh. This doesn't start out good.
Bobby's always teasing me for, my ghost hunting adventures, but
Yes, I
but
have heard that.
right. But yeah, so we were at this cemetery, and it's a big cemetery, like it's a big property. And it's got all these hills and these different sections. So, I mean, you could spend like a good hour or two walking around the whole grounds. So we were there late at night. It was probably like 11 or midnight. We're not supposed to be there. We're the only two people there. And we were walking around for like a good 45 minutes. And we were, chatting, having a good time, but we were being respectful and being mindful of where we were. And all of a sudden, we started walking up to this kind of newer section of the cemetery, and I started to get like a really bad feeling. I just started getting really creeped out.
Sure.
And so I was telling him like, hey, I think I want to leave now. Like I told him I feel uncomfortable. I'm getting scared. And he was kind of making fun of me and laughing, but he turned to me and he was basically saying, hey, don't worry. As long as we're respectful, nothing's going to mess with us.
Yeah.
And he didn't even finish the sentence, and something screamed at us, like a loud scream.
Yeah.
And it wasn't English. It wasn't words. It was just this like noise. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it definitely sounded like it came from a person, but it wasn't like any discernible words. So I got freaked out. I wanted to leave.
Yeah.
I looked at my boyfriend, and he just had this look on his face. Like he wasn't scared at all. He was like trying to figure out what it was and where it was coming from. And I wasn't waiting to find out. I grabbed him and I ran. I literally had to drag him along with me. And I was like, let's go. But I swear, you guys, this noise, this scream was no more than 10 feet away from us. Wow. It was so close.
Wow. Yeah,
there was no one else around. We didn't see anybody. We didn't hear anybody. We didn't hear any footsteps or rustling or anything. It was just this random scream. So it was so spooky.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, I love stories like that. And it's funny that you mentioned, Carolyn, that you were interested as a kid. Because again, one of my past guests, when she was like 9 years old, she's reading books. How do I talk to a ghost? How do I, like, her mom's like, what are you doing?
That is so
mean. She's
mean.
like reading these books. How do I talk to a ghost? And how do I do this? How do I do that? I think that's awesome. And that's
I always wanted to have an experience until I had this experience. And then I was good after a while. I mean, I didn't go to another cemetery for a while after that. Like I was scared.
The next week she was in another cemetery, just for the record.
So
took me about a week.
My spooky friends have heard this before, but I'm going to tell you guys really quick because this is one of my favorite stories about a cemetery. So I used to be a manager at a retail store, and everybody knew I like paranormal. So they would come up to me and they'd be like, hey, John, any ghosts? They'd kid me, right? Any ghosts in the store, and stuff like that, right? Whatever. One day, one of my employees came to me, and she was at high school. She came to me, she goes, John, I have a problem. And I'm thinking, oh no, are you pregnant? And I gotta like call your mom. Like, no. Because that happened.
No, it's a ghost.
I had two girls come up to me and tell me they were pregnant, and I had to call their moms.
That's a paranormal experience, as far as I'm concerned.
That's pretty spooky.
That's scary enough. All right, that's my scary story. That's it. Anyway, they had a Ouija board in a cemetery. A bunch of their friends were having this Ouija board in the cemetery. Yeah, I know, right? You're doing it already. Bobby's
Why
shaking
would you
his
do
head.
it?
Right. They got scared, ran off. Okay. So I said, did you hit goodbye? Did you use the planchette for goodbye? Did you close? No. Oh God. So anyway, really quickly, her mom shows up one day and says, John, Sarah, whoever, told me that, the paranormal. She's telling me they're having weird things happen at their house, shadow people, all this stuff, right? And like, what can I do, right? What am I supposed to do? So I said, you need to go back to the cemetery and you need to close that. Okay. Yeah. Just go and close it. grab the board, get the hell out of there. They go back. The groundskeeper had run over the Ouija board with his lawnmower.
Oh, wow.
Totally destroying it. Everything's destroyed.
Oh,
That's what you told me.
they're
So
done.
I said, right. So I said, go to the nearest Walmart or whatever, get a Ouija board, go back, close it up, and just take care. And they're telling me to come along. I'm like, hell no, I'm not going with you guys. I'm not getting involved in this mess. I got my own kids. Anyway, so we go back and they do it, and I guess things from there were okay. But right? Like, what are you doing? But they heard, like, they didn't hear a scream like you. They just heard like footsteps or something. I can't remember what they exactly heard.
Oh, that's almost worse.
Lessons learned, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's for all my spooky friends out there. So
Don't play with
let's
Ouija
get-
boards in cemeteries. Just don't do it.
So again, I'll make sure, Bobby and Carolyn, to share with all my spooky friends all your website links and where they can find
Mhm.
Strange Darkness Radio.
Thank you.
You guys are going to love it. Trust me. Listen to them. They're great. So let's get right into it. Let's do a little teaser first. All right. Bobby and Carolyn, what if I told you that nearly 100 years before Alcatraz, there was the Missouri State Penitentiary? Time magazine called the prison the bloodiest 47 acres in America. Today, guides and guests alike will attest to apparitions, unusual sounds, and eerie vibes filling the infamous prison. So when Time magazine says, hey man, you're nuts. This is
Exactly.
terrible prison. So
Yeah.
have you ever heard of it? Have you ever heard of the Missouri State Penitentiary? First of all?
I have. The first time I actually did was, I think, on Ghost Hunters when they went there to do
Mhm. You guys, Carolyn?
I hadn't heard of it until,
Ooh.
you told us that we were going to be discussing it, and I'm
Yeah,
pretty impressed that
you
I
guys
hadn't
are
heard
gonna
of it
love that.
before. So, yeah.
You're going to love this. You're going to laugh a little bit and then also be like, damn, I'm not going there. But maybe you will someday.
We're going.
I know I want to check it out.
We're going.
So first of all, guys, before I get to the fun stuff, talk about my sources that I always put in my links. Haunted US, Missouri Pen Tours, Atlas Obscuria, News, a Tribune, and the history of the Missouri State Penitentiary. So let me talk a little about the history. I know it's sort of boring stuff, but it will help us get a better idea of what this place is. Okay. So the Missouri State Penitentiary was built in the early 1830s. Now remember that because that's going to be important. Its original prisoners, I love this, let me repeat that. The original prisoners made the bricks that make up the first walls of the building. The prison grew many times from its initial 15 inmates until it was ultimately closed in 2004. So this prison not only was built by the prisoners, but also 1830s, and it just closed in 2004.
I know, that's wild.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
So here's some of the famous prisoners that I like to kind of get out of the way too. We'll talk about them here in a little bit. During this time, many well-known prisoners, including James Earl Ray, he's the guy shot. If you don't remember your history, he was the guy who shot Martin Luther King Jr. He and the Charles Pretty Boy Floyd. So he was this really badass in the 20s and 30s. And also, to make things worse, 40 prisoners were sent to the gas chamber in this prison, which is a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. Most prisons, to kind of give you an idea, maybe 20, maybe 30 tops, but they had over 40 actually prisoners. So this place was bad. Okay. It was really bad. In fact, they also had riots in there where people died, and They found a snitch, and as we know, snitches get stitches, but this guy was bludgeoned to death. He actually is now one of the ghosts. I'll talk about it here. So, the Missouri State Penitentiary housed hundreds of thousands, and I mean thousands, of convicted felons during its 168-year history, folks. Yeah. And many of these inmates obviously still remain. So one of the things they tell too, in 1831, when this started out, this guy, Governor John Miller, was convinced owning and operating a prison, hey, that makes complete sense. We need to have a state penitentiary here. So 2 years later, I love the way politicians think. Hey, let's just make a prison.
Exactly.
Let's just put this. So they passed the bill, and the construction began in 1836. Now, this is it. I want you guys' feeling on this one because I think this is hilarious. So the first prison's inmate was a guy named Wilson Edison. You know why he went there, guys? Stealing a watch.
I know. That's wow.
That's so sad.
Dude, what do you think of that?
Exactly.
You go to a
not the county jail
prison,
not
right?
prison.
This is crazy.
Where they hold murderers and serial killers, and the first inmate stole a watch.
Yeah, first inmate just stole a watch. Okay. And like I said, it's one of the longest maximum security prisons, was in the United States. And like I said, it began housing prisoners in 1836. Soon started laboring the prisons, doing, you see those old-timey prison movies where the guy's hitting the rocks? This was it.
Yeah.
Those guys sweating their balls off, hitting rocks for, I don't know why, but that's what they did. Which I think is really weird.
Keep them occupied.
Right. So by 1868, so short of time after this was built, it was hosting post-Civil War criminals. So it started out with a guy stealing a watch. Then had these Civil War criminals who were, these are the guys that did terrible things that I won't get into. Very, very brutal. But here's the thing, that Tom Wells, he was a former security or prison guard, I should say there. This is a quote from him. They just pretty much worked a lot of inmates like slaves. It was pretty brutal. And like I said, Tom Wells, who's this prison guard, he began working as one of the prison guards in 1989, and now he does ghost tours at the prison. Okay? So imagine you steal a watch. This is your first offense. You're in with these terrible people, breaking rocks. What do you guys think?
I think it's crazy because if you think about Tom Wells, 1989, we're not talking about 1800s. We're not talking about 1901. Yeah. How he says they were treated like slaves, with all that's going on, now and everything else about, prison rights and so on and so forth. But that time period, that's not that long ago. That's crazy.
Yeah. And kind of what the reason that he said that was because like the prison warden or some of the other higher ups in the prison system would make the prisoners build their homes with like, oh, I want a new house. Mm-hmm. So go out and build my house. Yeah. And I'm not going to pay you a dime.
No. Well, they got 11 cents somewhere, something like that. But yeah.
It's crazy, right? Yeah. So by 1932, with roughly 5,300 inmates, the Missouri State Penitentiary held the largest inmate population in the United States at that time and was considered one of the most successful prisons in the country. On average, the inmates cost the state 11 cents per day.
There you go.
And they were proud of that.
And wasn't
11 cents per day.
Like, wasn't it super overcrowded too? Like it was only built to hold maximum like 1,200 people, and they had 5,300 people.
Correct.
That's insane. That's like 6 or 7 to a cell. I mean,
correct. Yeah, they would average 3 to 4 a cell.
Oh, that's crazy.
And you're dealing with the guy who stole a watch, to a rapist to an axe murderer to God knows what, right?
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
and this is unbelievable. So maybe it's not so bad, but then again, you're like, oh, okay. But according to articles, they said on good days, inmates sought a sense of normalcy. I don't know how they do that, but they formed baseball teams, played miniature golf. Explain that one to me, either one of you. Attended chapel and worked long days in the dozens of factories. And it was like a major economic boom. So they used prison labor to basically build this community. And I don't know if you guys have ever done any research on this, or if you know anything similar to this. Unbelievable, right?
Yeah. The only thing I know is Folsom makes California license plates. I'm not even sure if they do that anymore, but that's
Not really the same, but
no, not at all. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, it worked though. They built a nice community out there, right? Those nice houses for those politicians, and
I know at one time, just a sidetrack, I know at one time, they don't do this anymore, but they used to make what they call prison jeans. So there was a company that actually marketed these jeans made by prisoners, and they were called prisoner jeans or prison jeans.
Wow.
Oh, I can give you one fun fact real quick. I used to work for the state, and we used to get desks that were built by the Folsom state prisoners. And we received one of the desks, which were really nice, all oak wood and everything. We ended up opening one of the drawers of the desk and found someone had took a number 2 in the desk just as a thank you. So that was
thank you very much.
Exactly.
That's why you don't buy things made in prisons.
Well,
not.
It's free.
Well, then you
the state is paying themselves,
right,
so it's free anyways. You know, even though the state's buying it from itself, but so
I love that, Bobby. I love it. That's great. So even though they could play miniature golf, it wasn't all strawberries and unicorns. The guards would whip a man for literally nothing at all.
Oh yeah.
Even if he went out of line, even if a guard was having a bad day, they would beat the ever living shit out of people. The gentleman who his name is John Switzer, who I got this from, he is actually a historian of the Missouri State Penitentiary. He does ghost tours and everything. One of the things, though, this is unbelievable. So in 1954, 2 inmates feigned sickness to attract attention. When 2 guards entered the hall, the inmates overpowered them and stole their keys. The 2 ran along, releasing other inmates as they pursued, remember I told you before, a jailhouse informant and bludgeoned him to death.
Wow.
I mean, there was supposedly, this is Gold Star, this is R-rated, so if any kiddies are listening to it, moms, you might want to take off their headphones and, take them out of the room. But these guys beat him such to a pulp. They'd use basically dental records of what teeth they could find.
Wow.
That they just beat him, just being a snitch. And so these waves of rioters happen. And this is part of the legend of Missouri State Penitentiary, where you do certain parts of the penitentiary where you just feel this overwhelming dread, and you just feel like something's not right. And people have said they feel like they're being crushed, like people are on top of them trying to crush them. But this is what happened. So eventually the wave of rioters stormed the deputy warden's office. Armed troopers on the roof were forced, yeah, I bet they were forced, to open fire with machine guns and riot guns, and they killed most of the prisoners. They said several convicts were injured by a gunfire. Okay. But following the riot, what did they do? Instead of giving these prisoners some hope and, hey, so let's not happen this again, whatever. No, they just put an extra caging.
Yeah.
So they just put up extra cages and everything to make, hey, this doesn't happen. Yeah. I mean, can you believe that? I mean, these people are at their wits' end, right? They go and kill this man who's probably just trying to get released from this hellhole,
Yeah.
and they just go, "Well, put up some caging."
Yeah, exactly.
Like the walls aren't tall enough already.
Yeah,
That
exactly.
place.
So this is guy again, one of the famous prisoners. I'll go to. So in 1959, James Parker Ray was sentenced to 20 years after holding up a St. Louis Kroger. And then once he got out in 1967, he capitalized on his job in the prison bakery and snuck into a large box, used to ship bread. When a truck arrived to pick up the supply, the bread box with Ray inside, he escaped, basically. Just a year later, in April 1968, Ray gunned down Dr. King. So, yeah,
that's amazing.
Oh, wow.
Just that set
That
of
sucks.
circumstances for that to happen,
Yeah.
That's unreal.
Right. And you think about it, if this guy was maybe, I don't know, treated a little bit better, or maybe something with the prison system to help him.
Well, he had two prior attempts.
Yeah.
But he had two prior attempts of escaping at that particular prison, and they caught him in crazy, situations. He'll be crawling through a air vent and he's stuck, and then they have to come and get him out. So he finally was able to make his way out. But yeah, that is interesting. If he would have stayed, and those set of circumstances may have not ever occurred.
Yeah, Dr. King would, obviously maybe still not be alive today, but to live a little longer and to help, obviously, the civil rights movement. So,
exactly.
But there were some people put in here that you would be like, why did they put him in here? So thing that someone went to jail over that, being someone who tried to bring freedom to the population, tried to help people. And she was jailed. Both of these people were jailed to help people.
Just for speaking out.
Yeah.
Which is, we're supposed to have free speech in this country, but during World War I, there was such high paranoia. They actually passed laws that said if you opposed certain things, like what they did, the opposing the draft or speaking out against the government, you could be locked up. Apparently, in one of the worst prisons in the United States. So
yeah, and these were women in here, and they didn't really have a women's section, I would say.
Yeah, women's ward.
Right. They weren't ready for them.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's crazy. So anyway, one of the other things too, they had a gangster, Pretty Boy Floyd, and he was considered one of the most dangerous gangsters at the time in the 1920s. He did a payroll robbery. So he robbed a train when they would put stuff on trains for whatever reason. I thought that was kind of funny. And he is a repeat offender, and he was in the cell too. So that's another famous guy that was in there. And then if you know anything about boxing, I don't know if you guys do, or sports, Charles Liston, or Sonny Liston. Yes, that's Sonny Liston, who eventually became the world heavyweight champion. He was in that prison too. So he actually did something good. He was one of the few prisoners that really did something good. So what he did was he would go in and work out and everything like that. And eventually someone saw him, a priest actually, who oversaw the prison gym. He reportedly marveled at Liston's physicality and took him under his wing. And he taught him not only the techniques of boxing, but he taught him how to read and how to write. And then when Sonny Liston was freed on parole, he began to world heavyweight boxing champion. And during his career, a lot of people don't know this about him, he faced many notable boxers, including Muhammad Ali. So I know you guys know who Muhammad Ali.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And in 1962, he became the world heavyweight champion. So that's a little bit about the history and some of the famous prisoners and everything like
So
that.
I have one more
Go
prisoner
ahead.
actually that I didn't see in your notes, and I had never heard of him before I started researching for this project. His name was Robert Berdella,
Oh,
and he apparently was a horrible serial killer. He was accused and arrested for torturing and doing terrible things and murdering 6 men. And I couldn't believe that I had never heard of this guy because I'm obsessed with serial killers. So that was a pretty cool
Another
story.
one of Carolyn's ticks, but
Another one
working on
of
it.
my weird
Nice.
obsessions.
Speaking of that, you're obsessed with serial killers. If you guys ever want me to be on your show, I can talk to you about a
Yes.
personal story of Ed Gein, the butcher of Plainfield, and also Jeffrey Dahmer.
Oh,
I
nice.
got 2 personal stories for you guys.
Oh,
I can
wow.
bring on the show
What?
sometime.
We definitely gotta have that. Have
Ed
you on the show.
Gein, that was
Hear
a long time ago. How do you have a personal story with him?
You can't spoil it. You
Remember,
gotta-
Ed Gein lived
give me a
up
little bit.
until he lived quite a long life. And let's just say it's not my story. It's my friend of the family's who's a nurse who oversaw when Ed Gein, near the end of his life, was in a mental asylum,
Mm.
and she was the head nurse there.
Oh wow.
Oh, I would love to hear
So she's
about
got
that.
some good. She's got. Like I said, I got a good story. That's a little teaser. So
We'll save it.
So let's get to the paranormal event. So this is a lot of things that people have seen here. They have seen shadowy figures who have been seen walking on the catwalks. So like the catwalks, they'll see people kind of, like these shadowy figures on these things. And that's in Hall A. There's a whole bunch of different halls and stuff who have different criminals and different spirits. So also Hall A is also notorious for these above ground spirits as well. One cell in particular, cell 48, is reported to be the site of the brutal bludgeoning of that prisoner, the
snitch.
informant.
Yeah.
So the prisoner's phantom reportedly remains entombed in that cell forever. So people who go in that cell have feelings again of overwhelming dread, heavy weight like pressing on them, like I said, and others have captured photos of strange, shadowy figures around that cell. And again, people who go in this cell, you remember, all these cells are not big cells, they're small cells.
Mhm.
I just feel like I'm being suffocated, like they can't breathe and they have to get out of there. So I'm like, oh man, that's great. So to make things worse, Missouri State Penitentiary had a dungeon.
Yeah, that was
Like
pretty
a
wild.
hated
And
one.
this is crazy. I will put pictures of this up and everything. Basically, what it was is they would put pretty much the worst of the worst in this place, but that wasn't necessarily true because sometimes they would just, if you gave the guard an evil look or a side look, they'd be like, in the dungeon you go, man. So perhaps don't be surprised to find that there's so many hauntings in this prison, in the dungeon. So one of the things is one of the guards say that they'll go in there, and this was, I believe, Tom Wells again, and he said that basically these guards would whip these men with the inches of their life inside only stone walls and a floor. So it basically was a dungeon.
Yeah.
There was literally the only light they had was like a single 60-watt bulb, and then it was just stone floors
And a bucket for a toilet.
And a bucket for a toilet. Yeah.
That they had to share. That's crazy.
Right? So story goes, they're oh my God. They put about 18 men down here with no bedding, no bunks, no blankets, no mats, like you said, Bobby, no toilets, a single light bulb. That's it. And now they didn't have 18 men in one room, but 18 men were put in these, about 3 or 4 of these, rooms, if you want to call it. And man, I just could you imagine that living, what that would do to you?
Oh yeah, it got much worse though. In doing some research on this, if you were to pass away down there, they would leave your body down there and let it decompose. They wouldn't
Oh
just pull
my
you out. And
God.
yeah, so yeah, it's wild.
One of
Oh
the
my God.
inmates who got out, his name was Firebug Johnson. He was an arsonist, but he was released and he wrote a book. He spent 18 years in solitary in those dungeons, and his book is called Buried Alive: 18 Years at the Missouri State Penitentiary, however you say it.
Yes, and Carolyn, that is right on. His name was J.B. Firebug Johnson.
Mhm.
I love that name.
Yeah,
I'd love to
love
be
it.
Firebug Johnson. I'd be like,
Yeah.
all right, I'd be a
Old
fun guy.
Firebug.
I don't think I said fires, but I just use it as a nickname. But
Cute.
like you said, he served in the dungeon from 1883 to 1900 for setting a fire that destroyed prison property and caused the deaths of several inmates. And
Mhm.
again, you're right, Carolyn. He wrote a book called Buried Alive: 18 Years in the Missouri State Penitentiary. And just down the hall from the Firebug cell, there's a little plaque. And it says on there, JB Firebug and stuff like that. So one of the things when you're in this dungeon, oh yeah, bad stuff happened, right? So one of the things is Switzer, the gentleman I brought in before, who's the historian and ghost hunter. He, on his first night when he was doing a ghost tour, he had an encounter with the entity, and he said, "I'm standing in front of the door to this cell, whatever you want to call it, and I go to flick the light off, and immediately I felt something on my right. I felt his face right here," he says, holding his hand against my cheek, and I can feel him breathing on me. And I'm thinking, this is according to Switzer, and I'm thinking, okay, you're imagining this, but you could not pay me any amount of money to turn my head and look toward the door where the dead end is, where he's standing right there
Exactly.
every time.
Mhm.
And then he said, this is also now the only building at the penitentiary, which I'll get into, the housing unit 1. But could you imagine that? You're just down in this place, and then you feel this breathing on you and like a hand against your face. And then,
I'm going the other
No.
way, regardless. I'm out.
I totally agree. I am out of there. See ya. And again, everybody who's been down there feels dread and just, they see this Firebug guy, and they're just like, yeah, I'm out of here. In housing unit 1, which is the main entrance, a specter, this is, I think, kind of funny. A specter with a unique name has been encountered, and he is known as Fast Jack. This spirit is well known around the control room in the front lobby of the building. Fast Jack got his name for his usual move of, this is still scary to me, gliding past visitors in a whitish blur. Little is known about Fast Jack, but some have claimed he wears a white coat like a doctor, and perhaps some people say he carries a clipboard, so perhaps he was a former worker in the prison hospital. Fast Jack has also been associated with opening and closing doors. Many figure, like I said, he has something to do with, maybe the prison health care or the hospital or something like that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Have you guys ever heard of Fast Jack?
No, I haven't, but he was probably the inspector that came and to look for violations and then were put into a cell and never was heard of again. That's probably what happened.
Yeah. Yeah. But could you imagine out of the corner of your eye, you're just on tour, you're just looking around, and then all of a sudden this whitish blur goes past you.
Yeah, that's interesting though, because it's usually something dark, a shadow figure, but to see something of any color, let alone white, moving at a fast pace, that's very intriguing. So,
And it's interesting that the people who actually are able to make out like a figure, because he's fast, but they do describe him as wearing a white coat, like a lab coat. So I wonder why would a doctor be haunting the prison?
He was probably killed.
No idea.
There were so many deaths in that prison. It was ridiculous.
All right. Yeah, remember I said it's 47 acres of blood.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not even going to get into the deaths and everything. We could be here all night if I get into that. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So John Wells, who's the former prison guard, like I said, who does ghost tours right now, he relates a ghost story of his own, and I thought this is kind of interesting. So he says, on a sunny day around 3 p.m., Wells had been talking to another inmate with long blonde hair and a white t-shirt. He saw this other inmate with a long blonde hair and a white t-shirt walk out from the door that he's doing count at. So he must be like in an area, and he gets other prisoners coming out of this door. So he sees this guy, long blonde hair, white t-shirt, just walk past him. Like, didn't even pay attention to him. And John Wall is like, hey, they know they're not supposed to be outside. And I thought to myself, you SOB, you better get back here. And this guy keeps walking out. He keeps following this man. And, he says, so he goes outside, after following this guy, seeing him go outside the building. And he gets there and nobody's there. Like the guy with the long blonde hair and he's just gone.
Just gone.
So John Wall said to himself, I thought, man, he's run around the building. So I went up to the right side of the building. Nobody was there. And then he's like, well, wait a minute. The big gate is there. And it's all locked. So I was like, I would know if I would have seen this guy. So he goes, I ran to the left side and there's a tower right there. And I said, hey, to the tower guard, has anybody run by here? And the tower guard said, no, it's count time. It's locked down. So I'm like, okay. And then there's a van sitting there. We used to take supplies up the hill. And I thought, my God, he's in the van. We got an escapee. So he says he runs up the hill and he goes to the van and, he opens the door. Nobody's there. And then he goes, maybe this guy's, whatever. He's running around the van, something like that. So he looks around again. He opens it up. Still can't find him. And, he asked the van guy, the guard or whatever, hey, have you seen this guy with long blonde hair? Did he get in here? And the guy driving the van is like, no, what are you talking about? He goes, listen, I saw him go in here. He had long blonde hair, he had a white t-shirt. And he's like, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. And he says, it was like somebody just punched me in the face. He said, nobody saw this guy. I was the only guy that saw this guy and I couldn't find him. And to this day, he's still shaken by that story.
Wow.
Just, he didn't know what was going on or how it happened, but he's, like, wow. Okay. So I don't know if you guys ever heard a story like that, where people have just out of your corner of your eye where someone's walking and then you try to find them and they're gone. So I don't know, anything similar like that?
No, you hear about stuff where things are being repeated. There are haunts that they're just going through their normal process of the day, and they don't know if they're dead. And but it's like a tape recording, being played, because of what this prison is built out of is probably the reason. The prison is built out of limestone and sandstone. And so that that's said to have a combination to be able to supercharge, paranormal, environment. So that could be just
it traps the energy.
Yeah, the energy is replaying itself.
It's already a miserable place.
Yep,
that's interesting.
Yeah. Absolutely. So other things that happen here are, of course, cell doors slamming. There's coins that will come down from the ceiling, from the catwalks.
Wow.
And people have actually seen the coins appear out of nowhere and just fall from these catwalks and everything like that. The other thing too, they said they've heard, and this is, guys, please explain this to me. But when ghost hunters have been there, they have also reported sounds of children and dogs. Anything? Does that make sense?
Well, it could be the certain murderers who killed children being haunted by those very children coming, and staying in that location once they've since passed or, got taken out by the gas chamber. And, so that could be a possibility, or the land prior, of what, was there before
where the
that.
prison was built.
Yeah. That's just interesting to me that prison would have like dogs
Have
and
children.
Yeah, exactly.
Usually that's in a haunted house, right? Huh?
Yeah, but there's a lot of those inmates that killed a lot of kids.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah. There's stories of that too, where children have come back to prisons where they see this dark entity of this child. And that's spooky too, man. That's crazy. So also, of course, in a prison, it also smells like potpourri and Yankee candles of beach, whatever they call candles now, the smell. But no, I'm sorry, guys. They include smells of cigarette smoke and intense body odor. So, there you go.
Yeah, I imagine they didn't get too many
Makes sense.
baths, especially, I mean, that was probably, good behavior if you, we're able to go take a shower.
Absolutely.
So.
Reward.
So one of the things too is, like I said, they have a bunch of ghost tours there and stuff. They go the history of it. They go a little deeper in the personal lives of the inmates. Like I said, a Pretty Boy Floyd, Sonny Liston, James Earl Ray, the serial gentleman was a serial killer there. And they go into the riot and stuff like that. And you are able to, which I think is really cool. If you do want to go there and investigate it, they're open for it. You can bring your own equipment, your own devices. They will gladly help you with that. Also, like I said, you're also given insight into the history of it. So that's kind of cool. And a couple of my former guests have done that.
Mm-hmm.
And they always get great stuff.
Oh,
They've
wow.
gotten EVPs. They've gotten touch. They've gotten smells. You name it. They said every time they've gone there, they get something.
It's
especially
really
if you're
active.
St. Bobby, the shower area.
Mm-hmm.
They always feel like, man, I got to get out of here. Something is not right.
Wow. When I was researching for this, I saw a lot of evidence. There were a lot of pictures that people had taken on tours. There's a few other famous ghosts, like there's an 8-foot tall shadow figure that lurks in one of the cells in I think housing unit 4. It's been captured. There was like a hanging man or like a shadow figure that was floating up by the ceiling, and it was one of those really tall halls, way like, I don't know, 30, 40 feet up, 20, 30, I don't know. But, yeah, I've seen some pretty convincing photos from that place.
Yes. And like I said, I'm just barely touching this. I'm just giving you a brief idea, but it is scary. And, you can go on and on and on with shadow people feeling, like some of these, like James Earl Ray, you go to his prison cell, you kind of feel like something's not right in there. And some people have said they've had discussions like with him, or he's talking to them about it. It really depends, right? So it's crazy. The whole thing is just, ugh.
It makes
sense.
Like
you said, full of death. Go ahead.
It's the bloodiest 47 acres in the United States. I mean, it makes perfect sense. There's so much misery. I mean, so many deaths from disease. The prisoners were mistreated. They murdered each other. I mean, I saw interviews of people who had been released who had stayed there. They said that, seeing other inmates get stabbed and beaten to death was like a common occurrence.
Yep.
And they were, in the earlier years, they were literally tortured. I mean, they were given ice baths, they were whipped, they were kept in solitary in those dark rooms.
Yeah, a lot of those inmates kept in solitary went blind just from
not probably
being
insane.
Able to see anything, whatever, for the amount of time
days
they were
and years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
And then aside from that, there's the executions too. They weren't given like a lethal injection. They were given cyanide gas.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if a lot of people know this, because I didn't know this until recently. But cyanide is one of the worst, most painful ways to die. I mean, you basically suffocate to death it stops your blood from being able to absorb oxygen, and so you're breathing, but you feel like you're suffocating. It's
and your
terrible.
internals are on fire as you're breathing
Yeah,
in.
it burns.
It burns.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Really, really horrible way to die.
Yeah, and also they're the first, I think it's the first prison that executed 2 people at one time. They did that on 4 occasions.
Yeah, they would put 2 people in the chamber and kill them together. How sick.
You know, I did Ohio. I did a episode on Ohio State Reformatory, and I thought that was bad. Yeah.
This is wow. Again, we're not even scratching the surface of the things that went on.
We could do a 3-parter or 4-parter. I mean, it's crazy. So maybe I'll have to bring you guys back. So anyway, you actually go through all parts of the prison. So yes, you do see the dungeon. You do see the main halls and all the other places. But also, and I don't know if I could do this, they take you to the gas chamber. So they take you to, and I'll put a picture of it, and it's like, my God, because this gas chamber there's like a little peephole that you can see in. Like, so you would see this, like you said, this person, just their guts, just their eyes bulge out, whatever. Ugh.
Horrible.
You know, like, no, thank you. No, thank you. So,
and these were not good guys that were being executed, but no one deserves to die like that.
No one deserves to die like that.
Just terrible.
Yeah, absolutely right. So, if you are brave enough to take one of these prison ghost tours, and they said this fall, but it's recommended to make reservations because they said they get a ton of people.
Oh yeah,
believe it or not, the tours go through, and I didn't think this was, I thought this was kind of weird, but okay, from December through February, but also due to weather. So what I was told, I actually called the tour because I was curious what they meant due to weather.
Okay.
And they were like, winter weather. Like if it's a really bad winter storm or something, they said, don't come in here because there's no heat. And it can affect the lighting. And they said, yeah, man, you don't want to do that. Now, here's some of the prices, and I think this is fairly reasonable because I always like to help paranormal places out too. Paranormal tour. So you can book a 2-hour guest tour, 2-hour ghost tour. It's only $30 per person. So not too bad, right?
That's not bad.
And then you can also go on a 5-hour tour or an 8-hour tour, which that covers everything according to them. And that's only $75 to $100 respectively. So not too bad. And yes, they do have a ghost hunting class, and that's $40 per person.
Does the class like tell you how to run or where to run or when to hide? It's like,
yeah. So according to this nice lady that I talked to, they don't give you any equipment or anything. They just tell you like, okay, to your point, they say, if you see a shadow person, maybe you want to back up a little. I don't know. Go over here. Yeah, she wasn't too descriptive about it. She was basically like, if you hear something or something touches you and you feel like overwhelmed, maybe it's better that you leave.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, you got my $40 back? No.
Right.
I wonder how many inmates have went home with these people. If they were able to be an attachment and
like out of the prison.
Exactly. Because that's the whole thing, right? You want to escape. I mean, you're still trying to do it in death just as well as you were doing it in life.
And that's funny that you mentioned that, Bobby, because one of my former guests too, she said her sister felt she had all these terrible dreams and she had all these weird things happening to her. And so finally she went to, I don't know, a medium or somebody that would help her with this. And they said, oh, you have a spirit attached to you, former prisoner. Did you go where would you go? And the lady was like, well, I just went to Missouri State Penitentiary. And this medium or whatever was like, okay, we need to get that off of you like right now.
Now. Like, oh my God, that's crazy.
We got to get that person off of you.
Yeah.
And she did. And I guess it work, they're fine. But yeah, that happens. You know, they will attach that. So I have to ask all my guests, what do you think? Haunted, not haunted? I
Extremely
think we know
haunted.
the answer.
That's me. Extremely
Bobby?
haunted.
Yeah.
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 If ever there was a place that was potentially haunted, I would think this place is a good candidate. I mean, just a miserable, terrible place. And the structure even just looks creepy. It looks depressing and sad.
Yeah.
Even if you don't believe in all this ghost stuff, I mean, the energy there just must be so heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
You know, go ahead.
I would love to take a person who doesn't believe like at all to a particular location like
Take
this,
them on the 8-hour
because I
tour.
guarantee you by the time it's over,
Yep.
they will be a believer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would love to go there.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, like I said, the tours are fairly reasonable. I mean, you know, call ahead to all my spooky friends and Carolyn, obviously my spooky friend Bobby.
I'm there.
Call ahead.
Overnight.
Busy. Yeah.
I'll do it. Hey.
So the lady I talked to said they only do overnights under special circumstances, and she didn't really elaborate on it.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing, if you were like big time, like Zach Baggins,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like ghost
you know what I
hunter.
mean, then they would probably be like, "Yeah, come on down."
I hit him with that
So I
Zach
don't know if
bag
that's
of
true or not.
10 grand, and I guarantee you I'll be there
Right.
all night.
You can stay for 3 days.
Hey,
Exactly.
take a look at this. Well, yeah, no problem. So, guys, Bobby and Carolyn, thank you so much again for joining me. You guys are great. This was super fun. I will, like I said, for all my spooky friends, I will put everything out there for your social media links and everything like that, and where they can find your podcast. Before I go, though, anything coming up special? Anything you guys are promoting? Maybe something really exciting on the horizon with what you're covering.
Carolyn, I'll let you. Well, we have we're doing another dual podcast that's coming up with Semi Skeptic podcast. That's going to be awesome.
Right.
But we also have another guest coming on. Her name is Tasha, and she does past life regressions. And that's a thing that we're also interested in, that whole, storyline to see, people who've come back, or how many lives, if you believe in reincarnation, that you've lived, and in just those type of experiences. And I think that's going to be a good episode. But definitely check out our Halloween episode, even though Halloween is past. It's really good and really fun, and I think you guys will enjoy it.
Yeah, so our next episode coming up is going to be our collab with Semi Skeptic podcast. And we're going to be discussing Ed and Lorraine Warren. So I'm very excited for that.
Oh, nice.
So anyone who's interested in them should tune in and catch the show. And then as for our socials, you can listen to us on Podbean, strangedarknessradio.podbean.com. We are at SD Radio on Twitter. Instagram is just Strange Darkness Radio, all one word. And then we also have our Facebook page, Strange Darkness Radio. You can call our Strange Darkness Radio hotline to be on the show. The number is 916-741-3032. And we love to feature listener stories. So anyone who has a paranormal encounter they want to share, just call the show, be on the show. And then if you do want to be booked to be on the show, you can contact me. My email is carolyn.sdr@gmail.com, or on Instagram you can message me Carolyn_strange_darkness_radio.
Yes,
that's a long
and
one.
I will put all this in my episode links, so if you guys could send that to me too.
Yeah.
Through an email, I'll put that all in my episode links so everyone, my spooky friends, can find you. And like I said, if you ever want me as a guest, I will tell those Ed Gein and Jeffrey Dahmer stories.
We would love to have you.
We
John,
have
as
to
a
have
guest.
you on our show. Yes.
Yeah.
And your
So we'll
your
work something
podcast is
out.
amazing, by the way. I just love how you tackle on getting other podcasters to come on, and just to keep that group and crew aspect of everything. It's really awesome, and it really helps out,
Yeah,
our
fresh,
podcast and others. So definitely appreciate it.
Absolutely. Like I said, we're our little coven here. We have a little coven of witches and scary, whatever, paranormal, and anything we can do to spread the word, right? Great. So we end our show always like this: is say hi to your ghost. Hello, ghost.
Hi, attachment.
Right.
And stay spooky. Thanks, Carolyn and Bobby. You guys are great. We'll talk later.
Thank you for staying up late with us and having us on the show. It was great.
Thank you.
Ethel, do you know where you are?
My body.
You have passed over. You died.
No. Everything, my body, they took it. It's torn.
What an excellent day for an exorcism.